A girl loses the love of her life in a tragic accident, but death will not stop her from being a toxic girlfriend. Today on Cinema Recapped, I'll show you The In-Between from Netflix. Spoilers ahead, watch out and take care. The movie begins with a car accident in which a couple are involved. The girl, named Tessa, wakes up in a hospital and is told that they managed to save her, but that her boyfriend died. 182 days before the accident, Tessa was at her parents' house when she suddenly decided to go out to take pictures on the beach. Later, Tessa goes to the movies where she meets a boy who is the one from the accident. The two decide to watch a romance movie together, and when it finishes, she tells him that the best romance movies are the ones that don't have a happy ending. They leave the cinema and say goodbye. Tessa realizes that she left her jacket in the cinema, so she returns for it, and realizes that the boy, named Skylar, also forgot his cap. In the future, after the accident, Tessa is in the hospital when suddenly she sees the boy who is supposed to be dead. He tries to show her something, but just at that moment Tessa wakes up, realizing that it was just a dream. Tessa explains to the doctor what she saw, but she tells her that it was just a nightmare. The doctor also explains that due to the accident she suffered a rupture in her heart, and that she died for a moment, but they managed to revive her and heal her heart. That night, Tessa is feeling very poorly in the hospital when she suddenly starts to hear the boy's voice, as if he were a ghost. The next day, Tessa speaks to a woman who supposedly knows about ghosts. Tessa tells her that she's been listening to Skylar, and the woman explains that perhaps the boy is a ghost, and that he's there because he still has things to say to her, and that Tessa must answer his calls so that Skylar can go in peace. Tessa decides not to believe in that, and just at that moment her parents pick her up because apparently she's good to leave the hospital. In the past, 102 days before the accident, Tessa's teacher tells her that she has a lot of potential to be a photographer, but that maybe she should take more romantic pictures, which makes Tessa wonder what she loves. Tessa starts to think more and more about Skylar, and one day, while taking pictures for some athletes, she sees him again. Tessa decides to go over and give him his cap back, and the two start talking very happily, since they didn't believe they would find each other again. At that moment, Skylar's mother appears and she tells Tessa that her son has not stopped talking about her, that he was even looking for her days after seeing her at the movies. Later, Tessa and Sky decide to go for a walk together, and then they go to an abandoned museum that used to be for newlyweds. They walk around the place and Tessa takes some photos. Then they both decide to sit down and talk and end up kissing. Sky takes Tessa home and they agree to meet again at the end of the month to spend the whole summer together. In the future, Tessa is very sad over the loss of Sky. She talks with a friend and explains the strange events that make her think that Sky is close, although the friend doesn't believe her. Later, Tessa goes to school, and there the teacher tells her that soon she has to submit a portfolio with her best photos to get into a good university. But Tessa doesn't seem interested in that anymore. Tessa decides to go for a walk and starts to remember all the photos she took of Sky, so she ends up very sad and decides to throw her camera into a lake. Later, she returns home and decides to throw away all the material she used to develop her photos, and tells her father that she's giving up photography. That night, Tessa goes to sleep and dreams that Sky hugs her and tells her that he's still there. When she wakes up, she's very surprised and begins to believe that Sky is giving her signs from beyond the grave. At that moment, Tessa hears sounds in the room where she developed the photos. She decides to enter and realizes that the machine is printing a photograph. Tessa decides to take all her materials out of the trash, and with these she begins to color the photograph, realizing that it is a photo she took when she went to the museum with Sky. Tessa is quite amazed and decides to put another sheet in to see if the machine prints another image. Then, as there is no response, she decides to approach and inadvertently places her hand on the sheet. The machine prints an image, and when Tessa goes to color it, she realizes that her hand was printed, but that Sky's hand also appears intertwined with hers, although the image fades after a few seconds. Tessa, convinced that Sky is sending her signals, decides to go see the woman in the hospital, but realizes that she has already left, although at that moment the doctor tells her that the woman left a book for her. Tessa starts reading the book and learns a lot about the afterlife, and also finds out that some cameras can capture ghosts. In the past, Tessa and Sky have a date, but Sky is sad because his parents are going to divorce. Tessa tells him that sometimes that happens in relationships, but Sky replies that he doesn't believe that, since he believes the couple should fight for their love. Another day, Tessa and Sky go for a walk, and Tessa tells him that her father abandoned her when she was a baby, and that later, when she was a girl, her mother also abandoned her. She was in an orphanage until her current parents adopted her as a teenager. The next day, Tessa and Sky go to a lake to take some photos, and then they row a boat. Sky tells her that he loves her, but Tessa doesn't respond. The two decide to go back to the car, uncomfortable, but just at that moment, Tessa decides to kiss him passionately, and they end up making love. In the future, Tessa talks to her friend about the photographs that appeared in her room, but the friend tells her that it's impossible. The two girls have to take an exam, but Tessa sees that her pencil moves on its own, and that it begins to draw some lines. Tessa is very surprised, and at that moment all the students' cell phones start playing Tessa and Sky's favorite song. Seeing this, Tessa's friend decides to believe her about the signs of Sky. In the past, Sky takes Tessa to a museum, and there he shows her that he displayed a photograph that she took, and that there are several buyers who want to acquire it at a very good price. Tessa gets angry with him for having put a photograph of hers up without her permission, to which Sky tells her that he did it so that she could see that people admire her photos, and that she should enter a prestigious university that is also close to the university he's going to, and therefore they'll be close at hand. Tessa doesn't listen to him, and they just end up leaving in anger. Later, Tessa feels guilty, so she sends a message to Sky to meet him, although he replies that he can't. Tessa goes to talk to her adoptive mother and explains that she had a fight with Sky, to which her mother replies that she should tell him in person that she loves him. In the future, Tessa and her friend try to communicate with Sky through a pencil, also through a mirror and a television, but nothing works. Tessa goes home disappointed, but just when she arrives, she notices that the GPS of the car suddenly indicates an address, and that this address coincides with the lines that the pencil drew at the time of the exam. Tessa decides to go to the address, and when she arrives, she meets the woman from the hospital who is talking about ghosts. The woman tells her that if she wants to communicate with Sky, she must look for the place where the most love between them arose, but that she must be careful, because once she crosses the portal between life and death, there will be no turning back. In the past, days after the fight, Tessa and Sky meet again at a party, and there Tessa looks for the right moment to tell him that she loves him. However, she ends up realizing that Sky is going to another university that's on the other side of the country. Tessa gets angry with Sky because she thinks he wants to abandon her. Sky responds that he's going to that university to be closer to his father, since he's not feeling well, to which Tessa could only reply that she needs him too. Sky tells her that she can't understand him since she doesn't have a family, which makes Tessa angrier, and she breaks up with him. In the future, Tessa goes to all the places where she spent time with Sky and takes photos of herself with a special camera to see if Sky's ghost appears in one of them. Tessa finishes her trip in the museum, and sitting in the place where she had the first kiss with Sky, she sees a light in a mirror on the ceiling. Suddenly, Tessa begins to walk up the wall, inching closer to the mirror. Upon reaching the mirror, she sees Sky on the other side. Both of them try to break the barrier, but they only end up breaking the mirror. The connection ends, and Tessa ends up falling to the ground. Then, Tessa's parents find out that she went to the abandoned museum, so they scold her. And just at that moment, Tessa faints. They take her to the hospital, and the doctor tells them that her heart wound is reopened. They will have to operate on her the next day. Tessa, hearing this, tells them desperately that she has to go because she knows that she only has a few hours left to meet Sky again. However, the doctor does not listen to her and only sedates her. Later, Tessa wakes up and decides to call her friend and tells her that she has to meet up with Sky as soon as possible. The friend decides to go to the hospital and take her out without permission. Both girls get into the car, and suddenly it starts driving on its own until it takes them right to the place where the accident occurred. Tessa gets out of the car to see if she can find Sky, and just at that moment, she faints. Then, Tessa's soul leaves her body and begins to see what happened there the day of the accident. We see that Tessa went looking for Sky, and when she found him, she told him that she loves him. So Tessa is very happy because she did not remember what her last words for him were, and it makes her happy that she could tell him that she loved him. At that moment, the ghost of Tessa sees the ghost of Sky, and together they hug happily and begin to travel together like two souls in love. They go together through many places they both wanted to travel when they were alive, and at one point Tessa sees that her body is now in a hospital, with her family waiting for her. She decides to say goodbye to Skye, and both agree not to forget each other. Tessa returns to her body and revives in the real world. Weeks later, Tessa presents her photographs that she took with Skye to try to enter the most prestigious university and continue her career as a photographer. The end. If you liked the video, please leave a like and subscribe to continue receiving the recaps of the best romantic movies. Thanks for watching.